And we are here with Elizabeth Millner, our in-court reporter who has been there for every piece of testimony in this case, including the testimony of Mia today. Elizabeth, it's great to see you. So I want to take this piece by piece. I want to start with the direct examination, and I want you to pick out some of the highlights from when the prosecutor was questioning Mia, again, alleged victim number 4 in the Sean Combs case. And by the way, I'll throw this question to you. We have this question from the Expat Exchange. Can you ask Elizabeth how the jury's reacting to Mia on the witness stand? I've read reports that some jurors are crying or visibly shaken. So let's hit both of those points. What did she say under direct? Then we'll move into cross. But what did she say under direct? And can you see how the jury's reacting at all?
Well, today was a little hard to kind of see the jury's reaction because it was another day of essentially a full courtroom. There were a lot of heads in there, a lot of people just wanting to know what Mia would be testifying to on day 2. Of course, this morning started with her direct examination. So from what I could tell as far as just the jury's reaction overall, specifically during her direct examination, for what I could see, which was not very much, they were still just paying very close attention. I saw, from what I could see, some of the jurors writing notes, but sadly from the position I was inside the courtroom, I couldn't see their entire faces, so I couldn't see if they were reacting emotionally to some of her testimony. I think if anything was happening as far as an emotional reaction, it was definitely yesterday when she was especially testifying to the sexual assaults that she says that she endured just while on the job. But even just some points and some big points during the remainder of her direct today, the prosecution jumped back to October of 2015 when Mia was over in Cape Town, South Africa, with Diddy, and they were kind of explaining a whole bunch of text messages that Mia was essentially getting from Christina Coram and even people like Diddy himself, because they were essentially trying to get in touch with her to kind of talk to her and find out how Cassie's doing, where Cassie is. Because if you think about just that time frame, this was around the time frame Diddy's over in Miami. He was spotted out with Gina, and Cassie was pretty upset about this, and to the point where she just was not picking up Diddy's messages. And so Mia had explained that Cassie was devastated by getting sent this photo of Mia and Diddy together over in Miami, so she stopped answering Diddy's calls. So what did Diddy do? He had Christina Coram and other staffers try to get Cassie on the phone. We saw exhibit photos of a text message from October 26th of 2015 between Christina Coram and Mia, where Christina Coram is writing to Mia, "Hey, it's KK. Did you get those She wrote, "Hey, it's KK. Did you get these? PD wants to talk to you. Sorry, messenger, don't shoot." Mia responded, she just tried to call him, and then that she's referring to is actually Cassie. Christina Coram responded, "Can you call me first? Audio call not completed." Mia said, "I just woke up. Did you ever explain to him being Diddy, what time it is? It's around 7:45 a.m. I have missed calls from 3:45 a.m. I will call you when we get to rehearsals. He doesn't sound in his right mind at the moment, so any reasoning should be in the a.m. your time." And Mia says around this time that Diddy had threatened to kill her and threatened her job, and even pretended to call HR on her at one point. And Christina Coram tried to intervene by saying, "Well, he just called me again, Mia. He just told me that if you don't call him in the next 2 minutes, you don't have a job." And Mia said she felt kind of panicked by this, and so she kind of responded back, "I just woke up to 48 missed calls. I keep waking up to a million calls. I answer the phone at all times. We aren't ignoring you. I'm just most likely asleep. This is really stressful. I'm not ignoring you." And so she said as far as returning from South Africa that she normally worked in the LA office, but she said after this return from this trip that Diddy wasn't physically around her when she returned, and that kind of made her job impossible, because one of those job requirements is to be kind of in his side, be near him, kind of understand what's going on with him, what he needs, and that sort. And so she had explained that I wasn't allowed to make massive money decisions without his approval. She also said I was letting people down, and projects were based on the relationships I formed, and she felt disappointed by this. Then we were kind of segueing into just the threats made to her job, where we saw an exhibit photo of kind of a memo informing Mia that she would be suspended for a 5-day period, to the point where she wasn't even being paid during this suspension. And so Mia said she was again suspended without she was suspended without pay prior to notice before, and that Diddy had asked Mia to get him a lot of options as far as workout clothes, because this was what the memo was kind of in reference to, that it was normally the stylist's job to lay out all his clothes and his different outfits for him. But Diddy just got so mad that he cursed out Mia. He got angrier and angrier, and Mia pointed out that, hey, there's other options over here if you want to look at these. But Diddy, and according to Mia, threatened her job once again. And so as far as just kind of where the direct examination sort of kind of ended, there was still a lot of stuff going in between, and I'm sure we'll get to that when we do our breakdown later today. But as far as where the direct kind of ended, they were talking again about kind of settlements and what happened, because essentially Mia was explaining that she left Revolt Films around 2016 because Diddy no longer wanted to pursue films, and this kind of left her without a job. And so she said that she was kind of encouraged to get a lawyer, so she got a lawyer to kind of pay for those overdue wages and just the bonuses that she had pretty much earned while on the job, but she didn't get paid these, and so she got a lawyer. And originally her attorneys got offered around $10 million, or they kind of pointed to this $10 million number as far as just kind of the amount this possible settlement could have. But she said the settlement actually ended up being $400,000, but she only got half of it because the other half went to her lawyers. And so she thought that she had told a couple instances of violence during these mediation talks, but she said, I thought I was doing something horrible. I thought I was breaking confidentiality. I thought I was telling his secrets. But the prosecution kind of ended that Mia didn't have any type of pending lawsuits with Diddy, but they also kind of referenced that even after Cassie's lawsuit was filed in November of 2023, all of a sudden Mia gets a text message from none other than D-Rock, and D-Rock was trying to get her in touch with Diddy. And it was interesting kind of hearing her perspective of it, because from her perspective, she said she didn't want to answer these calls. She didn't want to speak to Diddy. She felt threatened. She felt traumatized from the time that she was on the job, that she didn't want to reach out to him or message him back. So she kind of played along and tried to play dumb, according to her, just about, oh, I'm going to call him, don't worry, or I'm on a boat, I'm sorry I missed your call, just kind of trying to evade him, but also not get him too mad. But D-Rock kind of kept pushing to the point where he was even messaging her as late as February of just last year, essentially just wanting to talk to her. And it seemed interesting from her perspective, kind of that there was kind of this campaign kind of going on from the former staffers where they were trying to get in touch with her so they could kind of get, I guess, their story straight together and see how they could kind of put on a united front, as because again, around this time, Diddy's world is essentially collapsing because there are so many lawsuits being filed at this point. This was after Cassie's settled lawsuit, but still more trickling in. And so that's kind of where we ended on the direct examination. But there was still so much more even in the interim of that.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to address with our panel a little bit later is, could that be interpreted as either bribery or obstruction if they're reaching out to her after Cassie's lawsuit? Were they aware there was a federal investigation happening? I want to say, I seem to remember they might have gotten word that there was an investigation beginning in January of 2024. That time frame would be really interesting. So we'll put that to the side. What happened on cross? Because I'm reading it, and I'm reading about these these social media posts, but it's different being in the courtroom. Are you seeing these posts? Like, what is exactly the social media posts that are being Mia is being confronted with?
Well, the cross-examination is being conducted by none other than Brian Steele. So I was specifically wondering, how would he cross-examine her, especially after all the heavy testimony that we had heard just yesterday? And Brian Steele kind of came out on the attack. And so even before Mia is brought out, before the jury is brought in, because we kind of take a lunch break, we took a morning break in between the direct examination and the cross. So in that break, the defense is putting out a whole bunch of notebooks on the jury seats. And it's not necessarily a notebook. I should actually say it's a binder full of just different exhibits, photographs. I believe there's text messages in this binder, but they were laying all of these these binders out, then Mia's brought in, then cross-examination comes, and Brian Steele right out of the gate, it says, so because of Mr. Combs, you suffered a great deal. Mia responds, yes. You have trauma working with Sean Combs. Yes. He made you do things that are unthinkable. He was really kind of exaggerating his words here, and he violated you and he diminished you. And Mia responded true, or she responded yes. Brian Steele asked her, you wanted to kill yourself? And Mia had responded yes. And so he was coming off very kind of powerful and aggressive a little bit just right off the bat, which to me I found actually pretty surprising. And so then we start to get into the exhibits, and it's just a bunch of photographs, particularly from Mia's private Instagram account, from Mia's account. And so we're seeing photos from back in 2013 where it's an image of Mia on social media from her personal account. Her face is blurred in, so we don't see her real face necessarily. But we see a caption of what we do when you're not around. And Mia's holding just kind of some bottles of Ciroc. Obviously, Diddy used to represent Ciroc as far as brand deals is concerned, and she hashtagged it Ciroc. The defense says, well, this was 4 years ago after your employment and after years of your sexual assault. And they were really kind of trying to drive the point that you had all these different photos with these really nice captions to Diddy. But again, these were years after this sexual assault occurred. And they specifically pointed out that this exhibit from November 4th of 2013. So this would have been a few years after the first sexual assault that happened at Diddy's birthday party over at that penthouse here in New York. And we see an exhibit photo from that same day, but in 2013, where it's a photo of Mia kind of pretending to be giving birth. Diddy's in a doctor's costume. And it was like I think it was a Funny or Die video that they were doing because Andy Samberg was directing it. And Mia wrote in this caption, last non-B-Day shout out to my mentor at I Am Diddy. Thank you for letting me give birth to my dreams. And Brian Steele was like, you posed with your rapist pretending to give birth. And it was really just kind of like, whoa. And I will say this, Jesse, is that when Brian Steele was like, oh, well, you were posing with your rapist, I saw one of the jurors just look from down to just being looked up. It really kind of grabbed your attention, just kind of how he was directing these lines of questioning. And so we saw a whole bunch of different photos. I would essentially call it a photo dump because it was just a lot of photos from Mia's personal Instagram account where she has posed either with Cassie or she's posed with Diddy, and she's tagging Diddy in these photos and saying very nice things of either happy birthday or I'm so glad to be around you or I'm so glad you're my mentor. You continue to like kind of build me up, these types of things. And so, and that's kind of where we kind of were leaving off with, because it really was just a number of different exhibits. And I'm sure when we return from the lunch break, we'll see a whole lot more too.
By the way, we put up a poll. Do you think the jury will be impacted positively or negatively by Mia's social media posts of Diddy? 51% say positively, 48% say negatively. Very interesting. Before I let you go, Elizabeth, there's one concrete question I had outside of Mia. I don't know if you can answer it. Before she even got back on the stand, there was a back and forth regarding charts. And I think that's important, charts with respect to the prosecution, the defense, and the judge, because I think it had something to do with whether or not maybe male escorts were transported for purposes of these freak-offs, which, by the way, we don't talk about it enough. Transportation to engage in prostitution is another series of charges Combs is facing, transporting alleged victims and sex workers for purposes of sex work. What was going on there about the charts, if you know? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was kind of a moment that stuck out to me this morning. It was outside of the presence of the jury, and a lot of people, I will say, weren't taking notes because I don't think they realized kind of how important this possibly might be. But it was about the summary charts, specifically about the summary charts and the summary witness that is going to be kind of testifying towards the tail end of the government's case. And so the defense was kind of complaining about the government's summary charts and how they don't like that there's a category which labels the different men as escorts in this particular category when they're kind of comparing the flights as well as the hotel reservations. They said that they don't necessarily connect that this particular escort may have gone to the hotel, and they use the escort named Jules as an example of this. And so they said this is essentially, they said that this is pretty much just some travel records, and that it doesn't necessarily prove anything. However, the government said, well, we can take out this category of escorts, but we still need to keep the names in. But the summary witness will pretty much say that that there was messages sent either from Cassie or from Diddy. I'm going to a hotel on this date, and then a flight would kind of correspond with these hotel reservations. And so that was kind of the gist of those discussions that happened outside of the presence of the jury this morning.
Elizabeth Millner, great reporting as always. I know you need to jump back in there. Thank you so much for your level of detail, being our eyes and ears. Great job as always.
Thanks, Jesse.